Welcome to the EaglePod, where we share inspiring stories of Albanians who overcome challenges and reach new heights. Today, we're thrilled to have Denis Brahaxhia with us. Denis is a dedicated professional in the commercial real estate sector, holding a bachelor's degree in business administration with a focus on international business and management from Bowling Green State University. So, thank you for being here. I'm so looking forward to our talk.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
Let's start out with you sharing a little bit about your family's journey from Albania to the US and like where in Albania is your family from?
Yeah, happy to do so. So I guess I'll start out with the latter first and foremost. So my family is from Shkodër, and really when communism, was prevalent, my my dad, which just like every other male at the time, they had to serve in the military, right? At least for the majority of the men, right? So really what had happened was, he was really fed up with kind of the whole societal aspect, the suffering and everything of that nature. So he made it a point to escape, and he didn't tell anybody about it because, even if you told anybody about it, essentially, they would go after your family. They would, who God knows what they would have done to,
Yeah.
my grandparents at the time, right? So he didn't tell anybody, but he made it a point to escape. And him being in the military at the time, he kind of knew where the border was, where the weak spots were, and how to go about it. So, long story short, it was a new moon, so not a full moon, but a new moon that he decided to escape and go into what was then Yugoslavia, present-day Montenegro. And he, tripped the fence, right? Or tripped the wire, I should say, which sounded an alarm, and he just made a run for it through the mountains going into Yugoslavia. So, he managed to escape, but like I said, he tripped that alarm,
Yeah.
which, he says it way better than I'm saying it because obviously he
Yeah.
lived it. It sounds like a movie every single time I even hear about it.
Yeah.
Um, and it's crazy to even fathom, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But he was getting shot at because it was
Mm.
it was a new and there really wasn't electricity at the time because it was again such a poor country. It was communism. And long and behold, he made it into Yugoslavia and he sought asylum there.
Yeah.
So, they accepted him into Yugoslavia and they pretty much asked him, like, where do you plan on going? Like, where do you want to go? And, he really didn't know. He just knew that he wanted to get away from communism and the suffering and the lack of food and really the whole entire, lifestyle that Albania was at the time. So once he got there, they asked him, do you want to go to Australia? Do you want to go to Italy, Germany, the UK, really like the norm, right? And he was like, well, I've heard all this talk about America. Let's go to America. I'm out now. Let's shoot for the stars, right? So long story short, again, I keep saying that, but it's really not that short of a story. He ended up coming to the States, didn't know anybody. I
Yeah.
think he came with like $50 in his pocket or $50 equivalent in his
Yeah.
pocket and really just moving around from state to state. I think he started in Seattle and then
Mm.
he made his way over to San Diego. There
Yeah.
was nobody there. Went to Baltimore. There's a larger community of Albanians there. And then, he essentially found somebody that knew somebody from our family in
Yeah.
Shkodër, then he essentially planted his roots in Cleveland. And so he went there, keep in mind that he was, going from, city to city on like Greyhound buses and through
Yeah.
like essentially like through churches as well, or really anybody that was willing to help anybody to, somebody that's new, doesn't speak English, doesn't have money, really just trying to figure themselves out. And, unlike most Albanians, he actually came here legally,
Yeah.
where he managed to get the asylum and he gained his citizenship. And by that time, Albania had actually fallen out of communism at the time. So essentially, he had his US passport. He went back, he saw family again, and he met my mom. And then from there, my mom came to the States, and from my mom came my grandma and my cousins and everybody else. So majority of us are here, still have family all around Europe. Few are actually in Albania to present day. But, again, I would say like most Albanians, we have a lot of families scattered all around the world.
Yeah.
Majority still in Europe, but Western Europe, UK, Italy, Germany, Belgium, all of the
I love it.
traditional ones, but then also some in the States. So
Okay.
long-winded answer to your
Okay.
question, but I hope that kind of paints the picture.
No, it does. How do you feel like your Albanian heritage has influenced your personal and professional life?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess I would break that down in a couple different ways, to be honest with you. First and foremost, this isn't actually something that I actually realized. It was something that was told to me, and it was told by a professor my senior year of college. And he's actually my mentor, and he was one of the CEOs of subsidiary companies of AIG, American Insurance Group, and he told me, so like he was an expat. So he
Mhm.
has lived all over the world, and he was retired, and he was teaching international business, of course, because that was my major, right? So every time I would go and like meet him, I would, the little traditional Albanian way, I'd go shake his hand, show utmost respect. When you shake somebody's hand, that's, a superior specifically,
Yeah.
maybe like you'll put your other hand on top of his hand when you're shaking, just to show more
Yeah.
respect, stuff like
Yeah.
that. And he pointed me out and he was like, Dennis, you're Albanian, right? I was like, yeah, I sure am. He's like, you have an advantage amongst over many people because of your culture and the way that you just naturally show respect to people. And again, like I really wasn't aware of that until he pointed it out. And bear in mind, like he's an American from Utah and a fantastic guy, like a phenomenal guy. And I've learned a lot from him. But that was one of the key things. Like hearing that from an expat say that to me was something that I never again really noticed or thought about. And it's simple stuff like when we're at, even like present day now, when we're in like business meetings or business dinners or something, like it's in our culture
Yeah.
to share like, your meal. Like, okay,
Yeah.
if I get a filet mignon or whatever, I'll
Mhm.
cut a piece and I'll say, hey, like who wants one of this or something like that. And
Yeah.
it's second nature to us, which it's, I guess it stems from the fact that, our culture, or I shouldn't say culture, but our bloodline really has like suffered in the past, right?
Yeah.
Being and living in communist era, not having food, so people shared. And that was just instilled within our culture. So that more or less has still continued, but now it's in a societal aspect where, we're blessed enough and lucky enough that we don't have to be in
Yeah.
that sort of environment and lifestyle. But now it's viewed as or perceived as in the context that it's just outright respectful. So again, more or less long-winded answer to your question, but that I would say is probably the most profound aspect that has ultimately shaped my professional career at least, but
Mhm.
stemming from my Albanian identity. So
Okay. Are you involved with the Albanian American community at all?
I'm not as much as I would like to, and that's definitely something that I want to start doing more. And the reason I say that it's not as much as I would like to is because where I grew up, there weren't too many Albanians around. I grew up in an area or a city where, like in high school, I was really the only foreign person there aside from maybe a Filipino or a Vietnamese. And you know, great people. Don't get me wrong. Nothing against them, but there wasn't really a lot of different demographic change within the
Yeah.
profile, if I should say. So to answer your question, no, I'm really not as connected as I want to be, but especially now post university,
Mhm.
being a part of SAPS and meeting young professional Albanians all around the US. It has been awesome to actually meet people such as
Yeah.
yourself,
Yeah.
where we really can like connect and understand each other from a basis of just similar background and similar experiences.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
hopefully it'll continue to increase.
Yeah. For me personally, um, anytime I speak to an Albanian, I don't even have to know like much about them to know how they are, just because like we come from a similar background. So a lot of
Right.
it for I feel like it's just so assumed unless they're completely Americanized and it's like a totally different thing. But I feel like a majority of my friends that, speak Albanian, hold these Albanian traditions, still continue to celebrate our heritage. I feel like that's
Yeah.
really important, and I find so much joy in just like connecting. It makes it's like a whole different feeling Do you know what I mean? Like the whole,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. It's like this unspoken, like I know what you know, and like it doesn't have to be said. You know what I mean? But like,
yeah,
it's not a bad thing though. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like I completely understand like where you come from and like why you think this and why you think that, and
yeah,
it's just it's subconscious because
yeah,
because a reflection of yourself to an extent.
yeah,
So
for
yeah,
sure.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I did want to touch on one thing though that you did bring up is like, specifically Albanian Americans that, I was born here in the
Mm.
States and I believe you were as well, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like one thing that I recently read, I read an article where like Albanians outside of Albanians tend to hold closer to their culture than even Albanians in Albania themselves.
Yeah.
And I found that to be rather interesting
Mm.
for a couple different reasons. Number one, the fact that within Albania, like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term globalization,
I
but
am.
essentially, yeah, so really like the whole world is more or less becoming the same to a certain
Mhm.
degree, which is a good thing. But the downside of that is the fact that, a lot of cultures are losing their identity. And
Yeah.
so, I can see that even myself when I go to Albania and, like some people just don't want to do like traditional dancers or something like
Yeah.
that, or like listen to like Albanian music, which there's nothing wrong with that. But
Mhm.
like, I guess coming from somebody that
Mm.
grew up in the States, it's kind of nice to more or less at least every so often to kind of like tie back into your roots and see like okay well like let me listen to this song that
Yeah.
nobody really listens to anymore
Yeah.
like like it's kind of like still holding on tight to that cultural identity that is more or less disappearing a little bit.
Yeah.
But on the flip, I guess to close out on this is I also think it is a good thing to a certain degree because just like every culture in the whole world, I will say this is, there's good sides and bad sides to each one. So I think it's a matter of really picking the good side and leaving the bad sides behind
Yeah.
and really just developing not only as yourself, but if, the greater community and the diaspora does it all together, I think there's a lot of growth and potential for a better lifestyle altogether. So that's my 2 cents.
For sure. No, I definitely agree with that. And as you mentioned, you're part of SAPS and you've also been attended the event, most recent event in Washington, D.C. Can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I will say, getting an invitation to any embassy, let alone an embassy in Washington, D.C. was huge.
Yeah.
So, when I read the invitation, I was ecstatic. I had actually read it like 3 times and I was like, is this real? So, and then I
Yeah.
like did some investigation because if I'm gonna
Yeah.
go all the way out to DC, I'm like, people like, who's gonna be there? Is this
Yeah.
legitimate? What's going on? And lo and behold, obviously everything checked out. It was legitimate and it was awesome to
Yeah.
put it simply. I really love the fact that there were young Albanians, like we discussed, that really fall in a similar background
Mhm.
that, you know, growing up in the States, we are extremely blessed to even be able to say that, yet alone live that. But then meeting other individuals that still can relate to you and understand that, yes, we are Americans, but we're also Albanians, and we have a cultural identity that is more or less, being lost more so unless you choose to keep it.
Yeah.
And so kind of having those discussions with one another and understanding like, hey, we are in the same boat, and I completely understand where you're coming from. And we might laugh at a certain joke that is not understood by anybody else or a certain
Yeah.
perception, like why this and why not that? That is just a norm.
Yeah.
So all in all, it was a fantastic networking event. It was great meeting people. And then on the contrary, or on the flip side, I shouldn't say on the contrary, but on the flip side, hearing the panelists there, starting out with the ambassador of Albania to the United States,
Yeah.
being present, hearing him speak and say everything that he said, which I'm not going to even attempt to give a summary because there was a lot that was
Yeah.
discussed. It was just such a fantastic time, to be honest with you. And it's great to hear some thoughts that you might have
Mm.
come from other people, especially specifically from a positive light as well. So that was my perception of the whole entire event to begin with.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for all those kind words. Yeah, we really tried our best to, make it happen and it was amazing to see the amount of people that showed up. So it was our first big event of the year. So hopefully we have a couple more next year.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. It was definitely awesome. So.
Yeah. Since it's November, I'd like our final fact of the day to honor Albanian Independence Day, a celebration that has lifted the spirits of our people for more than a century. Observed in commemoration of November 28, 1912, when the Albanian Declaration of Independence was ratified, this day marks the moment when leader Ismail Kemal raised the national flag in Vlora, declaring independence for Albania. While the Albanian people and their diaspora share a rich history dating back millennia, the modern state faces complex political landscapes, with Albanians residing in neighboring regions like Kosovo and North Macedonia, and spread across the globe in places such as Montenegro, Turkey, Greece, and Italy. In fact, more Albanians live outside Albania than within its borders. Yet Albanian Independence Day unites Albanians worldwide, whether they reside in Albania or as part of the diaspora, fostering a shared heritage and inspiring hope for the future. And now, back to our guest speaker.
I do work in the commercial real estate industry now.
Mm.
Technically, I'm on the finance side, so I work for a large bank. Actually, it's the fifth largest bank in the United States. I'm not sure if a lot of people are familiar with that. I wasn't until I started working there, but
Yeah.
it's a pretty cool, like little fun fact, I guess, that it's
Yeah.
like under the rug. Um, with that being said, so the commercial real estate industry is a really unique field to be in. It's really it's not like your traditional, hey, I'm gonna go buy a home. It's not residential real estate, it's commercial real estate. So it's not your, Pulte or Ryan Homes new construction. It's your Amazon warehouse. It's your, Willis Tower in downtown Chicago. It's the Freedom Tower in New York City. So it's really these large scale projects, I'm sorry, that,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't really think about.
Mm-hmm.
And that has always piqued my interest. So the reason why this is even like why I'm here today is because, like I said, it always piqued my interest. So growing up, I started out, I think I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I would like doodle homes. Like it was like, with crayons and all this stuff. And my dad still keeps them, like
Yeah.
still keeps those little papers that like I used to doodle when I was like 4 and 5 years old. And, gradually that led to, playing with Legos, especially as a boy. And sure enough, like I never really wanted like the army Legos or the helicopters. I just wanted like the basic Legos so I could build houses and build like buildings and all this stuff. So, as corny as it sounds, to be honest with you, like I think it really was my calling because that's all I wanted to do. And I would love just like walking around like downtown or, even going to Europe and like going to like in Paris or Madrid and like you see the different architecture. Like it was always so fascinating to me. It was like a form of art, I guess, if you want to put it that way. And naturally that led to me wanting to go down the obvious route, which was, why don't I become an architect? And, like, let's design these and,
Yeah.
go from there. So, I thought about that for the longest time, like going through high school and, grade school. I was like, yeah, let's be an architect. And then I found out what calculus was.
Oh no.
And I quickly found out that I don't like this. So yeah, the architect side was definitely out the window.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, it was also, I think from a real estate side of things, there's a lot of excitement being a developer, not a designer.
Yeah.
And that encompasses everything. That encompasses the finance side. It encompasses, the design side, yes, but also the engineering side. And you're working with urban planners and, city ordinances and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I decided, the more realistic route would be let's go down the international business side. And that kind of alludes to your question of why international business, why not just like regular business?
Yeah.
And that kind of ties into, my Albanian identity. And, growing up, I would travel back and forth between, here in the States, and then in the summer, I'd go back to Albania and spend time with family and then come back when school would start.
Yeah.
And, I grew a really big love for traveling. I love kind of being in environments where, specifically now, like I love being in countries where I don't know the language, I don't know anything, throw me in there and I want to figure it out. So
Yeah.
it was kind of like combining the two
Uh-huh.
elements together and saying, all right, let's do business
Uh-huh.
and let's do it on an international side because I love as an international, more or less, I'm a first generation American, but more or less, the children of immigrants, it was kind of like, let's combine the two.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of how, or why I should say, how I got to where I wanted to decide
Yeah.
like what to pursue. And then
Nice.
from there, um, I actually throughout college, I wanted to kind of dive head first. So I got my real estate license and I started being a real estate agent throughout college. Again, just trying to get my feet in the water and kind of get like a head start, if you will.
Yeah.
I absolutely hated working with residential real estate
Mm.
clients. It was really difficult, like they want to sell their house and then they
Yeah.
don't want to sell their house. And then they, there's this phrase in the industry where it says buyers are liars. And it's I'll let you interpret what that means, but
Yeah.
it's a very factual statement, I would say. And it's a hard business to be in, at least the residential side, just
Yeah.
because, you know, number one, you're based on commission, which is a good thing to a certain degree. It sucks starting out, but once you get the ball rolling, it can be very rewarding from a financial side. I never saw that light of day. So I really like struggled, especially, who wants to have an 18-year-old sell the biggest asset that
True.
everybody owns. So it was a little bit difficult
Yeah.
getting clientele, but nonetheless, I still persisted. I had a few sales here and there, but nothing huge. So I always knew that I wanted to get into commercial real estate, but I never thought it was going to be as quick as I did. And I'm really grateful for that, in all honesty. But it was really this idea of let me get into the consumer to business, essentially, because that's what residential real estate is. And again, like when it comes down to commercial real estate, like you're dealing with the largest projects, the largest real estate, that
Yeah.
exists, right?
Mm.
So, think of like your local retail J.C. Penney, like that, they are a tenant in that building. Um, so really, I decided like the main or the more logical approach was to become a broker. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with a lot of these companies, but I wanted to work for like a JLL, a CBRE,
Yep.
and these large brokerage firms that it's essentially the Howard Hanna or the Keller Williams, but on a commercial real estate side. And I spoke to many people. I had some connections at JLL, and I still do. They're great guys. But they told me, like right out of college, like if you want to pursue this, you need to know what you're doing, and
Mm.
it's not an entry level job, essentially.
Yeah.
And I completely understood that, and I applied to a bunch of different places. So I applied to, a bunch of developers, um, and also a bunch of banks, right? Because there's three elements to, commercial real estate. There's, in case you haven't noticed, figured it
Yeah.
out by now, it's you have the broker, the developer, and then the
Yeah.
finance side of things. So there's really three main umbrellas. And then from there, I actually applied to a bunch of different places. I applied to specific real estate roles.
Mm.
So, an Amazon role and like the real estate side and like managing their warehouses, like a JP Morgan, PNC, obviously, and like all of these different places. But out of college, I really was just throwing my resume everywhere that I can just to kind of land something and just have
Yeah.
more options. I didn't want to be necessarily limited. So from there, I got accepted to a couple different jobs, which I was really happy about.
Mhm.
And it was kind of this like position where what am I going to choose? So I decided to really pursue my passion, which was, it's really now or never to get into the field that I want to, despite the fact that it was actually a lower paying job.
Yeah.
So I decided to kind of take that role and just run with it. And it was a completely different world, to be honest. Like I didn't know anything about finance. The last place I thought I was going to be working at was at a bank.
Yeah.
When I knew I wanted to be in commercial real estate.
Yeah.
But I was really fortunate, to be honest. I attribute a lot of my success to not just my mentor that helped me make a lot of these big decisions,
Mhm.
but also to my immediate manager and my boss. They have both, honestly, they have held my hand answering my questions, despite the fact that I was fresh out of college. And they told me, like, you're not you're not the most qualified person, but you have the passion for it. And that's what they liked. And they, gambled to put a gamble on me, or however the saying goes. And, sure enough, it has panned out really well so far, knock on wood.
Yeah.
But I honestly and like wholeheartedly like attribute my success to them, because if it wasn't for them, teaching and hopping on calls when I had a question, and
Yeah.
them putting the trust in me, I really wouldn't be in the position where I am right now, which I'm again ultimately grateful for. And it sounds so corny, but it's the honest truth.
That's great that you were able to, land all those opportunities and you decided to pick with one and you had someone that, believed in you from the start. And I think that's what's most important. Such a relief to, find these people who believe in you and are happy to mentor you along the way. Because really, who has any idea what they're doing from the from the very beginning?
Exactly. I will say, like, just one thing I did want to add on to that is I think there's also a level of responsibility
Hmm.
coming from, being a child and a descendant of an immigrant that came to the US with nothing.
Yeah.
Like that has been my driving factor. And I'm sure I'll speak on behalf of, probably 90% of Albanian
Yeah.
descendants. That, our main driving factor is the fact that it is in our duty to actually become somebody, not for ourselves, or not just for ourselves, I should say, and not just for our family, but in honor really of all of the sacrifices that our parents have done, right?
Yeah.
And I can confidently say that I'm not the only one that saw, their parents wake up at 4 or 5 in the morning and then didn't see them till 11 at night every single
Yeah.
day, weekends included, because they came here
Mhm.
trying to become somebody.
Yeah.
And so when you take all of that into account, it's, there's a lot of times where for myself, I'll be like, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I just want to kind of, stay in bed
Yeah.
or whatever it may be. And like even when you're like sick, like you really should call off work, you still go into work because you saw your parents do that,
Yeah.
and it's this level of identity that I think is a
Yeah.
blessing, but it stems from a curse that our parents had to go through, and it's
Yeah.
our duty to take that and to really run with it.
Yeah.
So that's my
Yeah.
viewpoint
No,
on
I
that.
agree with that.
Completely agree.
I feel like most of the time, me doing it for myself doesn't make me as happy as like my parents saying like, "Oh, all these sacrifices were worth it," because look at where we're at now. But yeah, like you said, it's not just about yourself, it's about our family and then just our Albanian heritage. So that's what really gets us
Right.
going. Really want to be
Yeah,
someone in this
exactly.
world. Yeah. Do you have
Yeah.
any rewarding aspects of your work? Or you talk about, I
Yeah,
guess, talk about the rewarding aspects as well as the challenges and how do you overcome them?
sure. That's a really good question. So I guess I'll start out with the rewarding side of things first. From the rewarding side, like I stated earlier, one thing that I love, and this is like my nerd side coming out, but I love seeing like these big projects, right? Like
Yeah.
working with developers and seeing what they plan on developing in the next 2, 3 years,
Mm.
and hopping on a call with them and discussing their plan and why they think they're going to achieve, these rents at this growth rate and all of the numbers, and seeing them compile and come together and picking their brain and seeing like, okay, well, how and why did you manage to choose this parcel of land in downtown Miami as opposed to Fort Lauderdale or wherever it may be, right? So that's really rewarding. Um, on the other side, really just being able to work with so many highly intelligent individuals. Like you are literally a student, especially in these fields, which I'm sure you can 100% relate to. Yes, it's a different industry, but we're surrounded with these individuals that just know so well the ins and outs of the industry.
Yeah.
And even when they don't know a particular answer to a question that you might have, maybe it's out of their, highly concentrated realm of expertise, they know somebody that does, and they're not afraid to actually say like, hey, I know a lot about this, but I'm not as qualified as this person. So go ahead and reach out to this person. They're going to give you a better answer. And that to me is extremely valuable, that I think a lot of people overlook or maybe tend to overlook. But that is definitely the most rewarding side of things. It's again working with these big, top tier, high class projects, and
Yeah.
then also working with the individuals that are behind them.
Mm.
The more challenging side of things is, as you would imagine, being only 3.5 years into the industry, there is a lot to learn. And when you're working with people that have been doing this longer than
Yeah.
we've been alive, it can be a little bit
Yeah.
challenging,
Yeah.
and
For
a little bit
sure.
nerve-wracking at the same time, but you kind of tend to learn how to cope with that relatively quickly because you have to.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's probably the more challenging side of things, but that challenging side also leads to the rewarding side because again, you learn from those people.
All right. And last question, looking back, what advice would you give to other young Albanian Americans interested in pursuing a career in commercial real estate?
This isn't my advice. This is
Mhm.
advice that was given to me by my mentor.
Okay.
Really, for anybody coming out of college, I'll speak on my own experience, going in a field of study such as business, international business. There's a lot of different routes that you can take. And this doesn't apply to only business students, but again, I'm going to speak on what I know,
Yeah.
and that is the business field.
Hmm.
Within business, you can go down the route of accounting, you can go down marketing, you can go down sales, you can go down management, HR even. Like there's so many different routes that you can go down. And it's really, if you do know what it is that you want to pursue, just like my mentor kind of advised me, he said it's now or never because there's never going to be a lower risk in your life where you can actually jump on it. Like, right out of college is the lowest risk that you can possibly take. And
Yeah.
what he meant by that is imagine you start out working in a job or in a particular segment of in business that you just really don't care for, you don't like, but you did it just because you wanted a job. When is a better time for you to transition and to get back into, let's say, commercial real estate if you did have a passion for that? It's ultimately like take the lower paying job starting out and work your way up because ultimately that's where you're going to end up is number one, loving what you do, at least to the extent of, work is
Yeah.
related. Um, and you just go from there. So that's again my best piece of advice is don't be afraid to take that lower paying job starting out. Don't settle, certainly don't settle, but don't be afraid to start out small because you'll work your way up. Especially in an industry like commercial real estate, it's hard to break into relatively. So you're probably going to have a lower paying job starting out, or if you have a good starting base salary, for example, you're probably going to be working a lot of hours. If you're at a brokerage firm, you'll probably be working 12 hours a day, most likely. So, understand that's just what it takes, and everybody does need to put in their time.
Yeah.
But the second side of that would be make sure that you're also working with people that want to see you succeed, whether that's on purpose or just because they have a kind heart.
Mhm.
Take advantage of that, not in a like egotistic way, but take advantage of that in a humble way, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, because ultimately we are the student, we're the ones that need them. But when you have somebody that is genuinely interested in your growth, that is a blessing in itself.
Yeah. For
And
sure.
depending on what industry you are, so like if you do decide to go in the brokerage firm, it's your boss's incentive for you to do well because ultimately the business does better.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind as well and just kind of know where your position is and make sure that you're constantly moving up. So that's my best piece of advice is
Yeah.
definitely start out where you want to end up. So
That's a great piece of advice. And I think it's just so challenging for a lot of people because there's so many opportunities out there, especially in the business world. You experiment, you get to know what you want, so you can definitely commit to something and just stick with it all the way because that's the only way that you I feel like can make an impact at the end of the day is to just
absolutely.
be consistent. Yeah.
Consistency is huge. Yeah, I
Yes.
agree.
Yeah. All right, and now we're on to our rapid fire round. Do you have a favorite place in Albania or a favorite Albanian tradition? If so, what is it?
Favorite place. I haven't explored the southern side of Albania yet. That's definitely some place that I want to go, like Samil, Vlora, Durrësi.
Mm.
So I guess right now I would probably say Marcia Mole. It's just beautiful there with all of the mountains,
Yeah,
especially in like July,
yeah.
August. So
All right, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
5 years, hopefully still in commercial real estate.
Yeah.
And just hopefully moving up within the industry. Pretty
Okay.
simple answer.
What's a song that never fails to put you in a good mood?
Jamadani via via. I think that's
Yes.
always. I don't know if that's actually the title. I think it is, but yeah,
I
that's
think
always
it, yeah. I know
yeah,
what
that's
song
always a
that
good
is.
song.
Yeah. If you could master any skill overnight, what would it be?
Any skill. Oh
Mhm.
wow. Okay. I know this is supposed to be like a quick round, but
You can go in depth if you want.
yeah, I don't know because like there's so many different sides. I would say probably probably calculus. It's really applicable
Yeah.
in every single field, but it's so difficult to like wrap your head around.
Yeah. All right. Cooking at home or dining out?
Ooh, it depends where we're dining out.
Just
Let's
like in
say
general, what is more like your style?
my style probably eating out more, which is a habit that I'll definitely need to change. But yeah.
Okay. All right. What is a quirky habit you have that most people don't know about?
Um, Probably like I always have to like play with like a pen or something, like always, especially at work.
Oh, really?
Kind of a habit, yeah.
If you were a character in a movie, what genre would it be?
Probably comedy.
Yeah. Dogs or cats?
Dogs for sure.
And what's a favorite childhood memory that still makes you smile?
Favorite childhood memory, probably playing soccer with my cousins and family back in Albania.
Nice. All right. Well, as we wrap up today's episode, I want to say thank you, Dennis, for sharing your insights and story with us. So join us next time as we continue to explore diverse perspectives and inspiring journeys. Until then, stay connected, stay inspired, and we look forward to bringing you more engaging conversations in the future. So thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah.
Of course. No, the pleasure was all mine.